Hey friends, thank you for joining me this week on the Leading Healthy Creative Teams podcast. My name is Matt Curtis and I'm your host. This week we're going to be talking about an onboarding document. Now, the first time that I heard this, I thought, what is this, a flight thing? Like, where are we going? It has nothing to do with travel. I'm sure you probably already anticipated that. This is a document that I found to be remarkably helpful when bringing a new staff member on the team. Now, you may have encountered this before, depending on where you've worked in your job history. You may have worked at a place that has given you an onboarding packet, and it's been a really helpful experience. For me, in all of the different places that I worked, both for churches and then, in college or in high school, I never once even heard this term. But I'll tell you, this is such a helpful document for new people. But let me tell you how to get it first. Sign up for the Creative Bites email. You can do so at lunchtimeheroes.co. Just fill out the information. And actually, you'll be sent to a page that has all of the past free resources that I've sent out as well via the email. So that's kind of a nice bonus. All of these tools are things that I've developed over the years. Now, don't hear that I'm some, tools genius. These have been in collaboration with phenomenal leaders, bosses, coworkers, seeing problems in the industry and working to solve some of those problems. But ultimately, these were a real key for me over the years to get better as a leader, to get better as a manager. And that's really a distinction I want to kind of lean into a little bit in this episode, the difference between a manager and a leader. This feels like a management process. You're telling me I make a list of things that somebody's supposed to do and I put it in a packet and that's helpful somehow? I didn't like management processes when I first began leading a team. I actually thought that it drifted into micromanagement. I thought that's the only way you could lead through a management lens. But I had a really great boss who was an HR guy. And I'll tell you, he challenged me along the way. And it was a great relationship because I began seeing the benefit of a lot of these management practices in relation to how I lead. So the principle for me with this onboarding document, I found throughout my career, when I got better at setting expectations, which is what this document does, I actually got better as a leader. So for me, I place a really high priority on setting expectations, whether it be with the clients that I work with, whether it be with leading people on a team, whatever it looks like, I want to set clear expectations. I actually do this with my kids. Hey, if you do this, this is the consequence. Hey, if you begin a practice like this in your life, this is probably where it's going to lead. I want to set clear expectations. So this document, the onboarding document, what does it look like? It's a pretty simple document broken up into a few different categories. I always like to start with vision. So what I did is I wrote a letter, and you'll see that in the document when you download it. I wrote a letter to this new employee, and I really wanted to take this opportunity to cast vision for them. What is the team that they're stepping onto? What is the vision behind what they're doing in this organization? Are they just drawing pictures? No, I'm talking about how you are taking the power of creativity and you are helping the church leverage it for the mission of the gospel. That's a pretty big deal. So that's what I'm trying to communicate to this new hire as the first piece of paper that they get. They walk into the office, I'm going to meet them, or their direct supervisor is going to meet them. I'm going to walk them to their desk and we're going to hand them the onboarding document. Here's a letter for you to read to begin understanding the mission of this place that you're now contributing to through your efforts. The second component is a little bit more managey. So understand that there's a management side of this. This is the first 100 days document. I've gone through and I've basically mapped out what their first 100 days are. Now, a lot of organizations will call it the first 90 days. I don't know why I called it the first 100 days, but it just felt like a really good way to articulate it. And so 90 days obviously is basically the first 3 months. So for me, 100 days was just sort of my spin on it. Do whatever you want, but it doesn't need to be a prolonged period of time. And so what I did is I leaned into the first week and mapped that thing out really, really detailed to the point where I actually went through and I scheduled meetings. So you show up to the office at 8 a.m. on your first day. You sit down at your desk. Your first meeting, which has already been scheduled for you, is at 8:15. So that means you got 15 minutes to read this cover letter and then somebody's coming in. Who is it? For us, it was the IT department. They're going to come in. They're going to make sure that your computer's set up. They're going to make sure that everything is where it needs to be, that you have a login, that you have the software installed that you need installed. So for creative, we use the Adobe suite. And so you're going to have the Adobe suite set up on your machine. If you use Affinity, if you use Canva, whatever it is, You show them how to either sign in or create a new password, whatever your process is. We want to get that going right out of the gate. Then right after that meeting's done, HR is going to come in and you're going to sign some paperwork. You're going to, make sure you understand your benefits. This document is you weaving in all of the other departments and all of the other future relationships that are important. Another part of this first 100 days is getting to know the different tools that we use in the organization. I actually went through and itemized. I want you to get familiar with this tool. I want you to get familiar with this tool. I want you to spend some time on this tool. I want you to understand where our files are stored. Here's a little tip for you. Your organization operates with way more idiosyncrasies than you think. And what this document does is it says, let me tell you all of our idiosyncrasies. So as a designer, I worked at an organization where all the files were stored locally. But then also as a designer, I worked at an organization where all the files were stored on a server. I didn't even know how to connect to the server. I didn't even know how this whole thing worked. That's what the onboarding document helps you with. So rather than me saying, hey boss, can you come over here? I don't know where to find any files. Instead, I can say, oh, in this document, it says where the documents are stored. It says where I can find them. It says how I can connect to the server. It shows me all of the different things that I need. I may still have questions. You're not going to answer everything, but that's what I'm mapping out in the first 100 days. Familiarize yourself with the processes that we have. The first 5 days really are meeting heavy, relationship building. I'm like planning lunches for you. The first day, you're going out to lunch with the executive pastor and your boss. Then the next day, you're going to go out with your boss's boss, depending on the number of kind of tiers in your organization. But we're going to map out this relationship path for you so you're getting to know the people that you're going to be interacting with in the organization. For me, if I get hired onto a team and I'm not given an onboarding document, I will make my own. And I will say, who are the people that I need to have conversations with? I'll tell my wife, hey, I'm going to need more money in my food out budget this week, but I'm going to go out to lunch with the senior pastor. I'm going to meet with the executive pastor. I'm going to meet with the department leads. Do you have a student ministries person? What about kids ministry? I want to get to know the people that I'm working with so that I can show them that I care for them, but also so that I can get to know them, some of their idiosyncrasies, some of their quirks. What are the things that make each of these people tick? What are their values? What do they care most about? What are their biggest priorities? What are their fears and insecurities in working with a communications team? Maybe they never have before, or maybe they have and it didn't go well. That's a very real possibility. So what is it that I can do in these early relationships to help build some bridges? I'm going to try to expedite that for somebody if they come in on the team and they don't have that same mindset. So that is what the first 5 days are focused on. And then the first 100 days, or I guess the next 90, I call it day 6+ in the document, I'm really focusing on larger projects that need to get accomplished. So these are things like reading the manual that you get when you join the team, or going through an orientation process if you have one in your church. We had one that we were developing, and it was something like every couple months. And so I would put that in there to say, sometime over these next months, I want you to go to this class, or I want you to attend these things. We were a multi-site church, and so for us, it could very easily be, I want you to visit each different campus in person at some point during this 90-day window. I want to find touch points for the ministry. What are ways that I can get this new person acclimated with the breadth and the scope of what we do as an organization? The best way to do that is to instruct them clearly and to give them these expectations in this onboarding document. Beyond the general expectation over these 100 days, there's 2 other sections in this first portion that I find to be helpful. The first is, what are ongoing meetings? I remember forgetting that we had a staff meeting one day. I walked in, I showed up, the time had just changed, and I sat down at my desk and I'm grooving, I'm starting to work. And I'm looking around, I'm like, where is everybody? I feel like there should be more people here. I checked my phone. Why aren't you at the staff meeting? Oh man, I totally forgot. Well, that's the experience that new people have every time they're interacting with everything on your team. They haven't been to any of these meetings. So that's another part that we include in this onboarding document. What are the repeat meetings that are happening on an ongoing basis? Some of those are, do you have a one-on-one with your boss? You probably should. Some of those are staff meeting, even weekend service times. Giving them all of that information is super helpful. The last section that I like including in this beginning portion is, what are the tools that we use? We try to go through and have a pretty exhaustive list. From the creative side, we're talking about, we use this as an FTP uploader if we need to. This is what our church app is used through. This is the software that we use for printing if you're in the copy room. Obviously, things like Adobe Suite or Affinity or Canva, whatever those tools are that you're using, having an exhaustive list is very helpful. I love including basic brand guidelines in this document. It's very helpful because it helps me know everybody has seen this. Everyone has a somewhat common understanding of how branding works in our organization, what we value when it comes to the things that we elevate, the things that we don't elevate. It has our tone of voice. How is it that we communicate to people on the inside, on the outside? It also has things like, how do we lay out our bulletin? What are the ways that we do copy? Is it a headline that's bold and then a different font size and then italics or whatever? We solved all of those problems, and I don't want somebody new coming in and then reinventing the wheel. Maybe it needs to be reinvented later, but I want everybody to be operating off of the same play card, and that's what this document does. It lets me present expectations from a brand standard point of view as well. And then the last document that I include was actually the last freebie, which is the graphic design workflow. The graphic design workflow is my expectation for any creative that's on my team. This is the way you lead every creative project that happens. I'm not going to rehash all the details for the graphic design workflow because that was a previous podcast episode actually, but you can go back and you can listen to that episode and you can really get a sense of how this document is incredibly helpful for bringing consistency to the management of your graphic design projects. If you want to implement this in your church, here's what you need to do. You need to sit down and you need to say, what are the most important conversations that we need to have first? What are the things that we want a new person to do in order to understand who we are as an organization? What are the key relationships that this person needs to invest in? Who are the people that he or she is going to be working with most? Let's arrange some of those meetings early on and make sure that we prompt that this is an important relationship. This also communicates to the person that they're meeting with that this is going to be a long-term ongoing relationship. So let's start the investment and relationship building process now. This sets very clear expectations for your team. So you then need to think through what are the things that somebody on the outside joining our team for the first time might need clarification on. What are the questions that come up often? You can learn this by asking a new staff member, hey, was there anything that wasn't covered in this document that you think would be helpful? You'll get some really good feedback. You know what? I feel like everything was helpful. Or I don't know who any of these people are. Okay, so I need to not just list their name, I need to list their job title too when it shows the meetings that are happening. So those are the types of things that you're really looking for when it comes to building a document for yourself. My contention is that every single person who joins your staff needs to have an onboarding document. Think about how stressed you were when you took your first job. I remember the first time I walked into the office at all of my jobs, and I'm thinking to myself, I don't know what I'm doing. In some cases, I had even relocated. So now we're in a new place, a new environment, a new area, and we don't really have relationships here. And I'm walking into this new building. It has a key card access. I don't know how to get in. I didn't even know where the entrances to some of these buildings were. So how can we help alleviate as much stress as possible for anyone new joining our team? It's by setting clear expectations. You can send this document out ahead of time, or you can have this be a document that they encounter when they first get to work. Whatever way you plan on doing it is fine. Just make sure that you're thinking through the content that's going into it. What other information would you add if you're giving it to them ahead of time? Is there new stuff that's a part of it? Adding an onboarding document for those joining my team gave me a huge sense of peace because I knew that everyone had a common experience when joining our team. I also knew the type of information that they were given. I knew the expectations that we set with them through the letter on the front end. I knew that that first week or so was very heavily and smartly managed so that they were going to have the right conversations at the right time. It doesn't guarantee that you're going to have a great experience with every employee, but what it does is it makes their experience better on the front end, and it lets you operate off of a common understanding, which is huge if things aren't going the right way. For bonus points, think through other ways that a new person on your team can belong more quickly. Maybe it's swag, maybe it's a shirt or a mug with the church logo on it. Maybe they already know somebody on the church staff. Let those two go out to lunch together and pay for the meal. Little things like this help new people feel like they belong much faster than if you just drop them in and don't give them any guidance. And that's why I'm a big fan of having an onboarding document for every person that you bring on your church staff.